In this video, I'm about to show you 20 grocery chains where you should avoid at all costs buying that rotisserie chicken, and most importantly, why. Starting off with number 20, Costco. Costco's rotisserie chicken has reached cult status. For under $5, you walk out with a massive golden bird that looks like it belongs on a magazine cover. Families grab them for dinner. College students grab them for a cheap protein hit, and some people even plan their entire Costco trip around picking one up on the way out. They've become such a staple that Costco now sells over 100 million chickens every single year, and they've refused to raise the price for more than a decade. It feels like the ultimate win for the consumer, until you start peeling back what's really going on. The nutrition facts are where the shine starts to wear off. That juicy meat comes with an enormous amount of sodium. A single serving carries almost 500 milligrams, and a whole bird pushes past 2,000. Think about that. Just one of these chickens can max out what health experts say should be your entire salt intake for the day. That's why so many people report feeling bloated or thirsty after eating one. You're not imagining it. The chicken has been engineered to make you crave more and hold on to water. And that word engineered is important, because Costco's chicken isn't just chicken. The birds are injected with a chemical solution before they're roasted. It's a mix that often includes sodium phosphate and other additives meant to lock in moisture and create that tender bite, no matter how long the bird sits under a heat lamp. It works, but it also means what you're eating is far from a simple roast. Instead, it's a heavily doctored product designed to survive mass production, not a kitchen. There's also the scale of the operation. In order to keep selling these birds at $4.99, Costco invested millions into building its own massive chicken processing plant in Nebraska. The move secured a cheap and steady supply, but it also opened the door to criticism. Reports from animal welfare groups and investigative journalists have raised serious concerns about how those chickens are raised and handled. For a lot of shoppers, that side of the story never makes it past the glossy skin and low price tag. So when you see people piling rotisserie chickens into their carts like treasure, remember this isn't just some mom and pop recipe roasted in the back of the store. It's an industrial product with salt, chemicals, and controversy baked right in. Costco has turned it into an icon, but not necessarily for the reasons you think. Number 19. Sam's Club. At first glance, Sam's Club looks like it's playing the same game as Costco. Their Members Mark rotisserie chicken is cheap, oversized, and designed to pull shoppers through the doors. But once you look at the nutrition facts, you realize Sam's is actually worse. Consumer Reports tested it, and the sodium count came in at nearly 550 milligrams per 3-ounce serving. That makes it one of the saltiest birds you can buy in the country, even saltier than Costco's version. Eat a quarter of the chicken, and you're already past 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Finish the bird, and you're closing in on 3,000. For people managing blood pressure or trying to keep their diet under control, that's an immediate red flag. And the salt is only part of the story. Like other warehouse clubs, Sam's Club doesn't just roast plain chickens. They're prepped with solutions and additives that make the meat appear more tender and juicy than it would naturally. You'll often see sodium phosphate on the label, a common additive that helps hold in water during cooking. That's why the bird looks plump on the outside, but can leave you with that heavy, overly seasoned aftertaste. What feels like flavor is really just a brined and engineered product. Then there's the freshness factor. Sam's Club doesn't move nearly as many chickens as Costco, and that means the birds don't always sell as quickly. Depending on when you grab one, you might be getting a chicken that's been sitting under heat lamps for hours, slowly drying out and losing texture. Shoppers have complained about inconsistent quality. One trip the meat is juicy, the next it's stringy and overcooked. And when the seasoning solution is already working overtime to mask flaws, that inconsistency becomes hard to ignore. The appeal of Sam's Club's chicken is obvious. It's big, cheap, and convenient, but the data paints a different picture. Higher sodium than Costco, additives meant to compensate for texture, and a hit-or-miss track record on freshness don't exactly scream quality. It might look like an easy dinner, but in reality, it's closer to a sodium-soaked gamble every time you pick one up. Number 18. Safeway Signature Cafe. Safeway's Signature Cafe rotisserie chicken looks wholesome at first glance. The packaging says fresh, and the golden skin in the display case makes it look like something you could proudly serve for dinner. But when you flip the label over, the reality hits. Safeway's birds are pumped with what they call a seasoning solution, and it can make up to 15% of the chicken's weight. That means you're not just buying chicken, you're also paying for water, salt, and a cocktail of additives. The ingredients list reads more like a science experiment than a home recipe. Sodium phosphate, carrageenan, dextrose, natural flavors. Sodium phosphate is added to keep the meat moist, carrageenan to improve texture, dextrose to add a subtle sweetness that balances out all the salt. It's a carefully engineered formula designed to trick your taste buds into thinking the chicken is fresher and juicier than it really island. But if you're trying to avoid unnecessary additives, or if you have kidney or heart concerns, this blend isn't exactly good news. Sodium is the big issue here. A serving of Safeway's chicken can put you well on your way toward your daily limit, and most people aren't eating just a few ounces. By the time you've pulled off a couple legs and some breast meat, you've easily stacked up more sodium than you bargained for. It's one of the reasons dietitians often tell people to think twice about deli rotisserie birds from chains like Safeway. There's also a quality problem that shoppers notice: inconsistency. Depending on which Safeway you visit, the chicken might come out juicy one day and rubbery the next. Because the product relies so heavily on injected solutions, when the cooking process isn't perfect, you really taste it. That off texture, mushy in some bites, stringy in others, doesn't exactly scream freshly roasted. Safeway markets this chicken as a convenient, ready-to-go dinner solution, but what you're really buying is a bird bulked up with fillers and salt water. It's fast, it's cheap, and it's easy. But it's far from the simple roasted chicken it pretends to be. Number 17. Stop and Shop. Stop Shop has been around for over a century in the Northeast, and their rotisserie chicken has become one of those staples families pick up for weeknight dinners. On the surface, it looks no different than what you'd find at any other supermarket. A bird spinning on the spit, seasoned skin crisping under the lamps. But the difference isn't in the look, it's in the label. Stop! Shop's chicken comes loaded with what the company calls a flavor-enhancing solution, and it's no small amount. In fact, the bird can contain up to 17 or even 18% added solution. That means nearly a fifth of the chicken you're buying isn't meat at all, it's brine. The solution is pumped in to bulk up the weight, to make the chicken appear juicier, and to mask the dryness that comes from sitting under heat lamps for hours. The ingredient list tells the story. Sodium phosphate to lock in water, carrageenan to alter the texture, dextrose to give the meat a faint sweetness, and a heavy dose of salt. Just 3 ounces, the size of a deck of cards, can put you close to 500 milligrams of sodium. And let's be real, nobody eats only 3 ounces of rotisserie chicken. Tear through a few pieces, and you're looking at more than 1,000 milligrams before you even realize it. For people keeping an eye on blood pressure or heart health, that's not a small hit, it's a real concern. Shoppers have also complained about the texture. Because of the injected solution, the meat doesn't always behave like a naturally roasted chicken should. It can come out rubbery in one bite and soggy in another. Some even describe it as almost ham-like, which makes sense when you realize the same phosphates are used in processed deli meats. That engineered texture might trick the tongue into thinking it's tender, but it's not the kind of tenderness you'd get from a bird seasoned and roasted in your own oven. What's frustrating is that Stop Shop markets this as a convenient, family-friendly shortcut, an easy dinner that feels home-cooked. But if you're buying it with that idea in mind, you're really bringing home something closer to a processed product in disguise. Behind the golden skin, the bird has been built in a lab before it ever reached the rotisserie. Number 16. Publix. Publix has a cult-like following in the Southeast. People rave about the subs, the friendly staff, even the way the stores smell. And right there at the deli, front and center, is their rotisserie chicken. It's one of those items families grab on a weeknight, thinking they've scored an easy, wholesome dinner. But when you peel back the skin, both literally and figuratively, you realize Publix's bird is hiding a very different story. The key difference here isn't just salt, like at Costco or Sam's Club. Publix leans on dextrose, a sugar, to create a distinct taste. That little tweak changes everything. Instead of a straight salty bite, you get a subtle sweetness that makes the skin caramelize and the meat carry a honeyed aftertaste. To some customers, that's the secret sauce that makes it taste better than competitors. But let's be honest, when you're eating a chicken that tastes closer to sweet and salty candy than a home roast, you're not exactly eating clean. And it's not like the sugar is replacing the salt, it's stacked on top of it. A 3-ounce portion still packs in around 500 milligrams of sodium. And that's before you account for the fact that no one eats only 3 ounces. Tear into a breast and a leg, and you've blown past 1,000 milligrams without thinking twice. Pair that with the sugar, and Publix has created a bird that checks every box of addictive food science. It makes you want another bite, then another, then another. There's also the texture and feel. Shoppers often mention that Publix's chicken runs greasy. The injected brine and sugar cause the skin to turn oily and sometimes even sticky, almost like a cheap glaze. Instead of a crisp, clean roast, you get a product that feels engineered to survive hours under a heat lamp while still tasting good enough when you finally unwrap it at home. Sodium phosphate is in there too, doing the same job it does at Stop Shop or Signature Cafe, locking in water to make sure the bird doesn't dry out, even if it means giving it that rubbery phosphate is in their dard. Deli Meat Chew. Publix promotes its rotisserie chicken as a family-friendly shortcut, but the truth is you're not bringing home a simple roast, you're bringing home a salt and sugar bomb dressed up like dinner. It looks comforting, it smells familiar, and it tastes addictive, but the nutritional profile tells a much harsher story. What you're really eating is a formula designed for sales, not health. Number 15, Kroger. Kroger isn't just another grocery store, it's the nation's biggest traditional supermarket chain. Even if you don't have a Kroger sign in your city, chances are you've shopped under one of its banners. Ralph's in California, King Soopers in Colorado, Fred Meyer up in the Northwest, Harris Teeter in the Southeast, Fry's in Arizona. They're everywhere. And in every one of those stores, the deli has the same centerpiece, Kroger's rotisserie chicken. On the surface, it's the same story we've seen before. Hot, cheap, and ready to eat. But Kroger's bird comes with its own unique twist, and not a good one. What sets Kroger apart is that their regular rotisserie chickens don't just come with the usual sodium phosphate and injected solution. Some of the versions actually list artificial colors in the ingredients. You'll see things like yellow number 5 lake, which is an artificial dye more commonly found in candy and chips than in a roast chicken. That's not something you'll spot on the label at Costco or Sam's Club. The fact that a supermarket chicken needs food coloring to look more appealing tells you just how engineered the product has become. And the sodium is no joke either. Depending on the flavor in store, a single serving lands in the 470 to 520 milligram range, right in line with the other heavy hitters. Add in the injected brine, usually around 12 to 15%, and you're paying for a bird that's been plumped up with water, salt, sugar, and now, sometimes, dye. What you're biting into is a chicken designed to look glossy under deli lights, not a straightforward roast from the oven. There's also a split inside Kroger itself. Their Simple Truth organic rotisserie chicken is marketed as a cleaner option, with just chicken, water, and sea salt. And on paper, it's a massive improvement. But here's the catch. It costs more, and many stores don't roast enough of them to keep up with demand. So, unless you happen to show up at the right time, you're left with the standard version, salty, colored, and brined. For a chain that feeds so much of America, Kroger's approach to rotisserie chicken shows the trade-off clearly. They can do a clean, simple bird when they want to, but the one they sell the most is the doctored, additive-laden one, and that's the chicken millions of shoppers are actually taking home. Number 14. Food Lion. Food Lion is a name everyone in the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic knows. With over 1,000 stores, it's the place people stop for weeknight groceries, and their rotisserie chicken is front and center at the deli. At first glance, it seems like the same story as everywhere else. A hot bird, seasoned skin, and a price that looks like a deal. But Food Lion's version comes with one of the heaviest brines you'll find in the grocery world. Check the fine print and you'll see it right there. Up to 15 to 18% of the chicken's weight is solution. That's not seasoning rubbed on the skin. That's liquid pumped into the bird before it's even roasted. In other words, if you're buying a 3-pound chicken, more than half a pound of that might be salt water and additives. Sodium phosphate shows up again, doing the job of locking in water and preventing the meat from drying out. Dextrose sneaks in sweetness, not because chicken needs sugar, but because it balances all that salt and makes the bird taste more addictive. The sodium numbers are brutal. A small serving, just a few bites, can put you at 500 milligrams or more. Scale that up to a meal and you're easily hitting 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams without blinking. For anyone watching blood pressure or heart health, that's a day's worth of salt in one sitting. And the problem isn't just the numbers, it's how the chicken eats. Customers often describe the meat as spongy or rubbery, almost like processed lunch meat. That comes straight from the brine. When nearly a fifth of the bird is injected liquid, it's no surprise the texture doesn't feel like something roasted in your own oven. The taste is just as hit or miss. Sometimes the chicken feels bland, because the flavor is hiding in the solution and not in the meat itself. Other times it's so aggressively salty sweet that it tastes like it was engineered to be addictive rather than satisfying. Either way, it doesn't deliver the clean, simple roast people think they're buying. Food Lion has built its reputation on being affordable and accessible, but their rotisserie chicken shows exactly what that affordability costs. You're not getting a bird roasted the way Grandma used to make it. You're getting a chicken bulked up with salt water and chemistry, dressed up to look like a bargain. Number 13. Meijer's. Meijer is the Midwest's answer to the one-stop shop. With stores scattered across Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and beyond, it's the place where you can grab everything from groceries to garden tools. And right by the deli counter, like clockwork, are the rotisserie chickens. For a lot of families, they look like a convenient dinner fix. But here's the problem. Meijer's bird is quietly one of the most engineered options out there, and shoppers notice. The ingredient label doesn't pull any punches. Sodium phosphates are right at the top, and that's the same additive used in processed deli meat to hold on to water. The idea is to make the chicken look plump, juicy, and tender, long after it should have dried out. But the side effect is a texture people constantly complain about, rubbery, spongy, and at times oddly slippery. It's the kind of bite that reminds you you're eating something manufactured, not roasted in a kitchen. Then there's the sodium. A 3-ounce portion clocks in at roughly 500 milligrams, which is right in line with the other salt bombs we've covered. Eat a meal's worth and you're past 1,500 milligrams before you know it. And when you factor in that phosphate brine, you're not just dealing with salt, you're dealing with additives that dietitians warn can stress the kidneys over time. For people with existing health concerns, this isn't just an indulgence. It's a risk. What makes Meijer stand out, though, is the inconsistency. Customers across the Midwest have called out how unpredictable these birds can be. One week you'll buy a chicken that's juicy and seasoned, the next you'll get one that tastes like it's been sitting all day, shriveled under the heat lamps. And because the bird relies so heavily on injected brine, when the roasting process goes wrong, there's no hiding it. The result is often a greasy, over-salted mess that feels like a bad trade for the money. The illusion is powerful. Meijer markets their rotisserie chicken as a home-style, family-friendly shortcut. But when the label lists phosphates, the sodium hits sky-high numbers, and the eating experience veers from mushy to dry depending on the batch, it's clear this isn't the dinner solution it pretends to be. It's another example of grocery chains selling an engineered product that looks comforting but eats like a processed food. Number 12. Walmart. Walmart sells more groceries than any other retailer in the United States, so naturally, their rotisserie chicken is a staple for millions of families. You'll find them sitting under the hot lamps at nearly every supercenter and neighborhood market, promising a quick dinner for a low price. But here's the catch. Walmart's bird might be the most disappointing of the big chains, and it's not just one problem. The first thing you notice is the size. While Costco is serving up birds that weigh in at about 3 pounds, Walmart's chickens often tip the scale at closer to 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. You're paying almost the same price, but you're walking away with significantly less food. That would be forgivable if the quality was there, but it's not. Walmart's rotisserie chicken has earned a reputation for being dry and stringy, sometimes even shriveled from sitting too long under those lamps. And then there's the nutrition profile. A 3-ounce portion runs you around 500 milligrams of sodium, right in line with the saltiest competitors. The problem is, you're getting all the salt, but not the moisture that usually comes with it. At Costco or Sam's, the brine at least keeps the meat juicy, even if it's overly salty. At Walmart, you get the sodium hit without the payoff. It's salty, it's dry, and it leaves you reaching for water instead of another bite. Shoppers across the country have complained about the inconsistency too. One day the chicken looks golden and tempting, the next it's pale and under-seasoned. Sometimes the skin tastes burnt, while the inside is still bland. That's the danger of an operation this massive. When the deli staff is just trying to crank out volume, quality control takes a back seat. It's also worth noting that Walmart's chickens are smaller because they're using cheaper, younger birds. That keeps the cost down for the company, but it means the meat itself is leaner and dries out more quickly. Combine that with hours under a heat lamp and you end up with a product that feels more like leftovers than a fresh roast. For the largest grocer in America, Walmart's rotisserie chicken is a letdown. It's small, it's dry, it's salty, and it rarely delivers the satisfaction that keeps people loyal to other chains. For many shoppers, it's not a dinner solution at all. It's a reminder that sometimes the bargain really isn't worth it. Number 11, WinCo. WinCo is a different kind of grocery store. It's employee-owned, it's warehouse-style, and people love it for rock-bottom prices on bulk goods. But when it comes to their rotisserie chicken, the story takes a turn, and not for the better. Unlike Costco or Sam's, where the problem is salt overload, WinCo's chicken has the opposite reputation. It's bland. On paper, the bird is still injected with a solution, usually around 12 to 15% of its weight, but somehow it doesn't carry the flavor you'd expect. Shoppers regularly complain that WinCo's rotisserie chickens taste watered down, almost as if the seasoning never made it past the skin. The first bite might be okay, but by the third or fourth, it's clear you're chewing on meat that feels more boiled than roasted. That watery texture is a direct result of the injection. Sodium phosphate is in the mix to hold moisture, but when it's overdone, it doesn't just keep the meat juicy, it gives it a spongy, rubbery bite. People describe it as slippery or wet, in a way that just doesn't feel right. And because the seasoning doesn't penetrate evenly, you'll get salty patches on the skin and completely flavorless breast meat underneath. It's inconsistent in a way that leaves you unsatisfied, no matter which part of the bird you pull from. The sodium numbers still stack up, of course, close to 500 milligrams per 3-ounce serving, so you're not even escaping the health hit. What you're getting instead is the worst of both worlds. A chicken that's salty on paper, but tastes dull in practice. And when you're eating something that manages to be both high in sodium and low in flavor, it feels like a lose-lose situation. Shoppers have voiced another frustration too, the size. Much like Walmart, WinCo's birds tend to be on the smaller side, and when half the weight is solution instead of meat, you're not walking away with much actual chicken for your money. That bargain price tag suddenly doesn't feel so much like a bargain. WinCo's rotisserie chicken is proof that cheap doesn't always mean good. You get a watery bird, rubbery texture, and a flavor profile that makes you wonder if it's even worth bringing home. For a chain built on low prices, the rotisserie chicken might be the clearest example of where cutting corners really shows. Number 10, ShopRite. ShopRite is the heartbeat of grocery shopping in the Northeast. If you grew up in New Jersey or New York, you know the scene. The crowded aisles on a Sunday, the bowl, basket branding plastered everywhere, and those rotisserie chickens glowing under the deli lamps like a beacon on your way out. They look like the perfect shortcut, grab a bird, skip cooking, dinner solved. But here's the catch. ShopRite's chicken is one of the sneakiest salt bombs in the entire grocery world. A small 3-ounce piece, literally the size of a deck of cards, packs in about 520 milligrams of sodium. That's higher than Costco, higher than Sam's Club, higher than most of the chains we've covered. And come on, who eats just 3 ounces? Nobody. By the time you've torn into a breast and maybe snagged a leg, you're already in the 2,000 milligram danger zone. That's your entire day's worth of salt in one sitting, and your taste buds might not even warn you because the brine makes it all feel normal. And the flavor? Hit or miss, to put it nicely. Some bites come out aggressively salty, others are weirdly bland, like the brine never reached past the skin. The texture doesn't help either. Shoppers complain about it being stringy, chewy, or just uneven. It's like playing chicken roulette. Sometimes you get edible, sometimes you get dry and disappointing. What stings is that ShopRite isn't loading this thing with crazy additives like carrageenan or artificial coloring. You don't see a novel's worth of chemical names on the label. Instead, they went with the simplest trick in the book. Drown it in salt water and call it a day. It's cheaper, it's easier, and it guarantees flavor, no matter how sloppy the cooking process island. The result? A bird that looks like comfort food but eats like a salty, stringy compromise. ShopRite markets the bowl and basket chicken as a family-friendly lifesaver, but anyone who's eaten one knows the truth. It's small, it's salty, and it's inconsistent. You don't feel like you just had dinner, you feel like you need to chase it with 3 bottles of water. Number 9, H-E-B. In Texas, H-E-B is more than just a grocery store. It's a cultural institution. People love it for the produce, the prepared meals, and the local feel. Their Meal Simple line of ready-to-eat foods includes rotisserie chicken in multiple flavors, traditional, lemon pepper, barbecue, and it's a product a lot of families rely on for quick dinners. But while the branding feels wholesome, the actual chicken leaves plenty to be desired. Start with the label. Every Hy-Vee rotisserie chicken lists sodium phosphate as part of the injected brine. That chemical is used to bind water in the meat, which keeps the chicken moist while it spins under heat lamps. It works, but it comes at a cost. The texture often turns rubbery or greasy instead of naturally juicy. Customers frequently describe the skin as overly oily, and instead of crisping up, it becomes limp by the time you get it home. The sodium levels are right in line with the other heavy hitters. A 3-ounce portion averages around 480 to 500 milligrams of sodium, which means a half bird can easily send you past the 1,500 to 2,000 milligram mark. For a company that markets itself as health conscious and community driven, that's a lot of salt to sneak into what's supposed to be a simple roasted chicken. The variety of flavors is another selling point for Hy-Vee, but it doesn't solve the core issue. Whether it's barbecue or lemon pepper, the seasoning is layered on top of a brined base. You're still getting the same phosphate-driven texture, the same sodium load, and the same greasy finish. The seasoning only masks it for a few bites. And then there's consistency. With over 400 stores, the quality varies widely. Some shoppers find their chicken reasonably fresh and flavorful, while others complain it tastes like it's been sitting out too long, greasy skin, mushy texture, and uneven seasoning. For a chain with such a strong reputation in other departments, the rotisserie chicken simply doesn't live up to the hype. Hy-Vee positions its rotisserie chicken as a convenient, family-friendly solution, but in practice it's just another heavily engineered grocery bird. With phosphate injections, high sodium, and an oily texture that turns off many shoppers, it's a product that looks better under the lights than it does on your dinner table. Number 8. Harris Teeter. Harris Teeter is one of the Southeast's more upscale grocery chains. Their stores are bright, the produce section looks polished, and the branding leans into freshness. Naturally, their deli counter features rotisserie chickens lined up under the heat lamps, and at a glance, they look just as appealing as the rest of the store. But the reality behind Harris Teeter's chicken tells a different story. Like most grocery chains under the Kroger umbrella, Harris Teeter relies on an injected seasoning solution to bulk up its rotisserie birds. That solution includes sodium phosphate, an additive designed to hold in water so the chicken stays moist while it rotates for hours. On paper, that sounds like a good thing. In practice, it leaves the meat with an artificial tenderness that feels more like processed deli turkey than a bird roasted in your own oven. The sodium numbers line up with the usual suspects. A modest 3-ounce serving runs close to 480 to 500 milligrams of sodium, which means just half a chicken can put you over 1,500 milligrams. That's nearly a full day's worth of salt in one sitting, tucked into a product that many shoppers buy thinking it's a healthier option than fast food. Customers have also pointed out issues that go beyond the label. Harris Teeter's rotisserie chickens often come out with skin that's greasy, rather than crisp, leaving you with an oily finish instead of that satisfying crunch. Some describe the flavor as slightly chemical, a side effect of the phosphate brine and heavy-handed seasoning, and the consistency is hit or miss. One store might deliver a bird that's edible if salty, while another leaves you with a chicken that tastes like it's been sweating under a heat lamp all afternoon. It's especially disappointing given the chain's reputation for quality. Shoppers expect better from Harris Teeter compared to discount grocers, but the rotisserie chicken doesn't meet that standard. Instead, it ends up in the same category as so many other engineered grocery birds: high in sodium, loaded with additives, and inconsistent in execution. For a store that markets itself as fresh and reliable, Harris Teeter's rotisserie chicken feels out of place. Behind the glossy branding is the same salt-soaked phosphate-heavy formula that turns what should be a simple meal into another processed product in disguise. Number 7. Acme Markets. Acme has been a fixture in the Mid-Atlantic for well over a century. Their stores are known for being neighborhood staples, and like any full-service grocer, the deli counter usually features a row of rotisserie chickens. They look golden brown and inviting under the heat lamps, but Acme's version has built up a reputation that's hard to ignore, and not in a good way. Like the other banners owned by Albertsons, Acme sells the signature cafe rotisserie chicken. On paper, that means the same formula you'd find at Safeway, Vons, or Albertsons itself. A bird injected with up to 15% seasoning solution made up of sodium phosphate, carrageenan, dextrose, and of course a heavy load of salt. It's a processed recipe before the roasting even begins, engineered to keep the meat plump and to guarantee flavor even if it sits out all day. That alone would put it on the skip list. But what makes Acme stand out is execution. Across customer reviews and forums, one complaint comes up again and again. Acme's rotisserie chickens are often cooked unevenly. Shoppers describe birds that are charred and leathery on the outside, but pink or even undercooked near the bone. That's the worst of both worlds, burned skin masking raw meat. For a chain that wants to compete with bigger names, it's the kind of inconsistency that can ruin a shopper's trust fast. Even when the cooking process doesn't go that wrong, the eating experience is rarely smooth. The phosphate-heavy brine gives the meat a rubbery, sometimes slimy texture, and the sodium level is still through the roof, close to 500 milligrams in just a small portion. Combine that with the uneven roasting, and you're left with a chicken that doesn't just disappoint, it makes you question whether it's safe to eat at all. Acme's branding sells the signature cafe chicken as a reliable dinner option, but the reality doesn't live up to the promise. Between the additives, the sodium, and the sloppy preparation, Acme's rotisserie chicken isn't just engineered, it's often poorly executed on top of that. For shoppers in the Mid-Atlantic, it's one of those grocery shortcuts that's more likely to frustrate than feed. Number 6. Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie is one of those classic Southern grocery chains, with a long history and a loyal customer base. Walk into the deli section and you'll see their rotisserie chickens lined up under the lamps just like everywhere else. They look familiar. Golden birds spinning on spits, ready to be boxed up and taken home. But once you peel back the skin, Winn-Dixie's chicken quickly earns its reputation as one of the weaker grocery options out there. The first issue is appearance. Instead of that appetizing deep brown skin, Winn-Dixie's birds often come out looking pale, almost under-roasted. It doesn't just look less appealing, it signals that the cooking process isn't giving you the same flavor development you'd expect from a true roast. Customers and reviewers alike have pointed out how anemic the chickens look, with skin that feels limp rather than crisp. That lack of color carries over to the flavor. In blind taste tests, Winn-Dixie's chicken consistently ranks near the bottom because it's simply bland. The brine and seasoning don't penetrate much deeper than the surface, so once you get past the skin, you're left with plain, under-seasoned meat. And when the seasoning does hit, it's inconsistent. One bite can be salty, the next oddly flavorless. Texture is another strike. Shoppers describe the breast meat as dry and stringy, while the thighs and legs can come off greasy or fatty. It's a strange imbalance that makes the chicken feel like two different birds cooked at once, parched in some parts, rubbery in others. In at least one review, people even mentioned a faint odor when opening the packaging. Nothing spoiled, but definitely not the fresh roasted smell you'd want from dinner. The sodium is still up there, hovering in the 500 milligrams per 3-ounce range, so you're not escaping the same health issues we've seen at other chains. The problem is, you're not even getting much flavor in exchange for all that salt. With Winn-Dixie's bird, you take the hit to your blood pressure, but don't get the satisfaction of a juicy, well-seasoned roast. Winn-Dixie has a strong name in the South, but their rotisserie chicken just doesn't live up to the reputation. Between the pale skin, uneven texture, and disappointing flavor, it feels more like a half-finished product than a reliable dinner shortcut. In a market full of engineered but at least tasty birds, Winn-Dixie manages to stand out for being both salty and bland, a combination that leaves you wondering why you bought it in the first place. Number 5. Whole Foods. Whole Foods markets itself as the place for clean ingredients and premium quality. Shoppers expect that when they grab a rotisserie chicken from behind the deli counter, it's going to be a cut above the typical grocery store bird. The packaging and branding lean into that promise of better, but time and again, customers and reviewers have found the opposite. In taste tests, Whole Foods rotisserie chicken is often singled out for being dry, even in the dark meat. Business Insider compared chickens from Costco, Safeway, and Whole Foods side by side, and their verdict was clear. The Whole Foods bird was the driest of the bunch, with breast meat that felt overcooked and dark meat that lacked juiciness. When a product this simple ends up dry from end to end, it defeats the entire point of buying a ready-made chicken in the first place. Flavor is another weak spot. Multiple reviewers, from Tasting Table to Chowhound, noted that Whole Foods rotisserie chicken looks appealing, with crisp skin and a nice aroma, but when you bite in, the taste just isn't there. The meat is often described as bland or under-seasoned, like the chicken was roasted without enough care or spice to give it depth. Instead of a savory, roasty flavor, you're left with something closer to plain baked chicken, which isn't what people are expecting when they pay Whole Foods prices. And that's the other issue: cost. Whole Foods chickens usually come in higher than the $4.99 loss leaders at Costco or Sam's Club. Shoppers are fine with paying more if the quality matches, but when the meat comes out dry and flavorless, the value just doesn't add up. Reviewers often call out the disappointment of paying a premium for something that doesn't even beat out budget competitors. What makes Whole Foods' rotisserie chicken especially frustrating is that it could have been the clean label exception: fewer phosphates, fewer additives, a bird that justified its reputation. Instead, the execution fails where it matters most: taste and texture. Shoppers walk away with a product that looks the part, but too often tastes like a letdown. Number 4. Target. Target has spent years reinventing its grocery section under the Good Gather brand, aiming to give shoppers a modern, trustworthy alternative to traditional supermarkets. Their rotisserie chicken is supposed to be part of that promise, a convenient, ready-to-eat dinner option that fits into a busy schedule. But the reality? Target's bird has built up a reputation that's far less flattering. Customer reviews on Target's own site tell the story. Shoppers have described the chicken as rubbery, tasting near spoiled, and sometimes even cold at the bottom while hot on top. Others say it tastes like it was seasoned with water, which is a brutal way of saying it's basically bland. The inconsistency is a recurring theme. Some people get a decent bird, others get one that feels like it sat out for half the day. And that last point isn't an exaggeration. In a local ranking of grocery store rotisserie chickens in Minneapolis Street, Paul, Target's entry was criticized for exactly that: birds that had been sitting under heat lamps for hours. The result was breast meat that turned bone dry, while the dark meat went the other direction, mushy and waterlogged. Instead of a juicy, evenly roasted chicken, you end up with two extremes on the same plate: one part parched, the other soggy. It's especially disappointing when you remember what Target's trying to sell here: convenience with quality. Shoppers expect a clean, flavorful roast, not a gamble on whether today's bird will be dry, greasy, or oddly textured. And unlike Costco or Sam's, where the price point almost excuses the flaws, Target charges more for a smaller chicken. That means when the quality slips, the value equation slips even harder. Not every Target rotisserie chicken is a disaster. Some stores clearly do a better job keeping them fresh and properly roasted. But the pattern of complaints, dry white meat, mushy dark meat, flavorless seasoning, even occasional rubbery texture, shows that this isn't just a one-off. It's a quality control problem, and it's why Target's rotisserie chicken often lands at the bottom of taste tests and consumer reviews. For a retailer that prides itself on style and consistency, the rotisserie chicken feels like an afterthought. And when dinner is on the line, that inconsistency is enough to steer shoppers somewhere else. Number 3. Hy-Vee. Hy-Vee is a giant in the Midwest. It's the kind of store that prides itself on community focus and fresh offerings, and for many families, that rotisserie chicken by the deli counter is a go-to weeknight dinner. The branding makes it feel like a reliable home-style option. But when you dig into the reviews, Hy-Vee's bird consistently comes up short. The biggest complaint is dryness. Local taste tests and customer reports alike describe Hy-Vee chickens as overcooked, with breast meat that's parched and dark meat that's lost its juiciness. In one ranking of grocery store rotisserie chickens, Hy-Vee's bird had been sitting under heat lamps for more than 4 hours before it was picked up, and by then the skin had shriveled, the meat was dry, and the bird was swimming in its own juices at the bottom of the container. That's not just unappetizing, it's a clear sign the process isn't being managed carefully. The label tells part of the story too. Hy-Vee admits their chicken contains up to 12% added solution made from broth, salt, and natural flavors. In theory, that should keep the meat moist. In practice, it's not enough to rescue a bird that's been roasted too long and left under a heat lamp for hours. Instead of juicy, flavorful meat, you end up with something that's simultaneously salty and dry. Flavor is another weak point. Shoppers often describe the chicken as bland, even with the injected solution. Unlike other chains that go overboard with salt or sugar, Hy-Vee's problem is that the seasoning just doesn't stick. The result is meat that looks the part but tastes underwhelming. That blandness makes the dryness stand out even more. Every bite reminds you of what's missing, And for a store that leans heavily into its reputation for fresh, high-quality deli foods, that's a disappointment. Hy-Vee can get the branding right, but the execution on rotisserie chicken often feels careless. Instead of delivering comfort food, it leaves customers with a bird that's dry, flavorless, and unappealing. For a chain as big and respected as Hy-Vee, the rotisserie chicken feels like a blind spot. Families come in expecting a dinner shortcut, but too often, they walk out with a product that's more compromise than convenience. Number 2. Big Y. Big Y is a household name in New England, with stores scattered across Massachusetts and Connecticut. They market themselves as a world-class market, and their deli showcases the same hot rotisserie chickens you'd expect to see in any big grocer. On paper, it looks like another safe, easy dinner option. But ask around locally, and the story isn't nearly as flattering. The most common complaint is size. Big Y's chickens are noticeably smaller than what you'll find at warehouse clubs or even some regional competitors. Customers have said you're basically paying full price for a bird that feels more like a large Cornish hen. That smaller size might not sound like a big deal, but when you're comparing it to Costco's 3-pound chicken for $4.99, it starts to feel like you're being shorted. Then there's texture. Multiple shoppers on forums and review sites have described Big Y's birds as stringy and dry, with meat that doesn't shred cleanly but pulls apart in fibers. Instead of juicy roast chicken, you get something that feels closer to leftovers that have already been reheated once or twice. And when you're buying it hot from the deli case, that's not what you're expecting. Flavor has also been called out. Some locals say the chicken used to taste better years ago but has slipped in quality, now coming across as bland or inconsistent. Depending on which store you visit, one chicken might be palatable, while another has little seasoning and tastes like it's been sitting under heat lamps too long. That unevenness makes it hard to trust, especially when families are counting on it for a quick dinner. All of this adds up to disappointment. A chain that prides itself on being world-class is selling a rotisserie chicken that too often feels undersized, underseasoned, and overcooked. It's not a chemical bomb bird like some of the bigger chains, but the complaints of small portions, stringy meat, and weak flavor keep showing up in customer feedback. For shoppers in New England, Big Y's rotisserie chicken looks like convenience, but too often, it eats like compromise. Number 1. Ralph's. Ralph's is a California grocery institution. With hundreds of stores across the state, it's often the neighborhood stop for everything from produce to pantry staples. Their deli counter is no different. You'll always see rotisserie chickens lined up under the heat lamps, ready to be boxed up for dinner. On the surface, it looks like the same simple shortcut shoppers have been relying on for years. But peel back the layers, and Ralph's rotisserie chicken tells a different story. Like other chains under the Kroger umbrella, Ralph's birds are injected with a seasoning solution that includes sodium phosphate. It's designed to keep the chicken moist, even after hours under a heat lamp. But the result is an artificial juiciness that too often feels rubbery or processed. Instead of a naturally tender roast, the texture comes off slippery and spongy, leaving customers with a bird that tastes engineered rather than freshly roasted. The sodium numbers are just as concerning. A modest 3-ounce portion carries around 480 to 500 milligrams of sodium, which means half a chicken pushes you past 1,500 milligrams in one sitting. That's close to the recommended daily maximum, tucked inside what's supposed to be a wholesome family dinner. For shoppers trying to eat clean, Ralph's rotisserie chicken doesn't deliver. It just disguises its salt load under golden skin. Customers have also pointed out how inconsistent the product. Island. Some complain the birds are tiny for the price, weighing less than the warehouse club chickens while costing more. Others describe them as greasy, with skin that turns oily instead of crisp. Worst of all, there are repeated reports of uneven cooking, burned and dried out on the outside, but still pink or underdone near the bone. That's not just disappointing, it's a safety concern. For a store with such a big footprint on the West Coast, Ralph's rotisserie chicken is a letdown. Between the phosphate injections, the sodium overload, the small size, and the inconsistent execution, it's a product that looks like comfort food but eats like a gamble. Families might pick one up thinking they're saving time, but too often they're trading quality, and sometimes safety for convenience. In a state known for high standards around food and freshness, Ralph's rotisserie chicken doesn't just fall short, it stands out for all the wrong reasons.